In this video I'll be talking a bit about the Danes, a faction I've been using a lot and a faction that I've grown to like. Not the strongest faction, but you can do some interesting things with it. First up, the general's options. We have the Nordic Warlord, underwhelming stats, 14 melee attack, 14 charge bonus, good health and armor. He's a sturdy unit, but he's not great offensively. Curiously enough, he scares everyone and he is immune to fear, which is potentially useful. Then we have the Nordic Raid Leader, a great melee damage, great charge bonus, great health. That melee attack though, why he has Leve level melee attack is beyond me. Dies very easily. Viking Captain, things start to look a bit better with the Viking Captain in terms of survivability. 16 base and 16 armor piercing. Good health, armor, an okay-ish charge bonus, also throwing missiles with 75 armor piercing damage. So a very dangerous man to have in your army. Nordic Leve, there isn't much to say about the Nordic Leve and the Nordic Spearmen. In my opinion, these units should be cheaper. They die so easily to just about everything. Elite Nordic Spearmen, a very sturdy spear unit, good armor, decent health, very good morale. Why the Nordic Spearmen have higher morale than the Nordic Raid Leader and the Nordic Warlord, no idea. But these guys have expert charge defense and frenzy. Frenzy is of very marginal use. Plus 10 melee attack, not great for the cost of 50% fatigue. Expert charge defense and spear wall. Spear wall is going to increase entity mass, give attack against cavalry, defense, attack against elephants, and plus 25 missile block chance. So this is a very good defensive ability that potentially can be exploited, like I showed in another video. Nordic Spearmasters, a beefier version of the elite Nordic Spearmen. Against some factions, the upgrade might make sense, against the Eastern Roman Empire, for example. Then we have the Nordic Bikes. Pikes in Attila have all the problems that pikes in Rome 2 had. They are not maneuverable, they are not effective offensively. At best, they can be used as a glorified picket fence in front of your army, and they can be used with some fun tactics. Nordic Band, quickly becoming my favorite unit. They are so amazingly cheap. They throw a missile that is going to do 70 base and 20 armor piercing damage. Their melee stats are absolutely horrible. 5 melee attack, 11 melee damage, 1 of it is AP. It's just, the unit sucks so bad that I have to like it. Good for meat shield duty. Then we have the Nordic Brigade. These guys are sort of upgraded Nordic bands. Still terrible melee stats. They throw 2 missiles, so a bit questionable whether it's worth it. They still die in droves. Then we have the Wolf Coats. I do not see a place for these guys with their 10 melee attack, 10 charge bonus, and overall horrible stats. Campaign stealth, they can encourage units, give them plus 9 morale, so might be useful for that. I haven't used them though as much because they are so weak. They ignore terrain, so they can move through forest and stuff very easily, and they have guerrilla deployment. So in a rear charging role, sure, you can use these guys to lay some MLG ambushes. The Herdmen, the first decent melee unit for the Nordics. They have swords, 40 melee damage, very standard stuff. Good melee attack, decent charge bonus, not great. Good melee defense, decent armor. The Herdmen are actually, they scare, they are immune to fear. A decent unit. Then we have the Nordic Warriors. They are sort of an upgrade from the Herdmen, but they do come with a bit more armor, but significantly less health. They do, however, come with a much higher melee attack, and they throw 2 missiles, whereas the Herdmen throw no missiles. The same with Elite Nordic Warriors. They are an upgrade from the Nordic Warriors. They scare everyone. They have the shield wall ability, and they are immune to fear. Then we have the Chosen Warriors. They are so good against infantry. but they're also so expensive. They are far worse against infantry than your cavalry units. And with only 100 health, their morale is absolutely stellar. Like, these guys are going to fight to the last man. However, too expensive for my tastes. Nordic Warriors, Nordic Warband. Nordic Warband, again, these units scare people. They throw axes, or javelins. Some of them throw axes, some javelins. Viking Raiders and Norse Berserkers. Norse Berserkers can get monster kills with their high melee attack and their 16 AP. Very good charge bonus, but for the price they are not close to being worth it. And these Nordic Axe Warriors will wreck shit with 48 melee attack, 56 weapon damage, 57 charge, but 10 melee defense, 10 armor, they're not going to last long, and they just disappear under enemy cavalry. Same is true for the Nordic Axe Warband, and the same is true for the Viking Raiders. Excellent capture power isn't really something that you're going to be using for anything in multiplayer except for siege battles, certainly not in field battles. Cheap bows can be useful for pouring down flaming, whistling shot and flaming shot on the enemy, together with the fear that a lot of these units cause. It's very viable to use a scare build with the Danes. Nordic Hurlers, good missile damage, no AP, very high rate of fire, 9 ammunition, so they do well enough against crossbows that don't use flaming shot against them, but I still think you're much better off spending the funds on another unit. Thrall Skirmishers, Nordic Brigands, basically the same unit. The Nordic Brigands have 50 base, 10 AP. These guys have 70 base, 20 AP, so I don't quite see why you would bring the Nordic Brigands. Sure, I mean, they do have more melee attack, but more melee damage, but 5 melee attack? What on earth are you going to do with that? Nordic Javelin Man, again, they have a lot of ammunition for being a javelin unit, but they are also very expensive. They have precision shots, which isn't going to increase their missile damage by a massive... Well, it's going to increase their missile damage by quite a lot, actually, since they have 70 base and 20 AP. So, can be useful against enemy cavalry as second line skirmishers, because they don't have very long range. In terms of melee cavalry, your Nordic Mounted Raiders, your Nordic Horse Raiders, the Viking Raider Cavalry, I would avoid the Viking Raider Cavalry. For only 25 more, you get an awesome unit in form of Nordic Horse Lords. Good health, good armor, good melee attack, good weapon damage, very good bonus against large, and an ability I really, really like. These units scare, so they are going to be able to win quite a lot of engagements by fear alone, and also, especially when rear charging, they are able to scare away enemy units. Can cause chain routes very quickly. They can also use the Unbreakable ability, and this is a really good ability. It costs nothing in terms of stamina or anything, and it can be used to make the unit unbreakable for 30 seconds. So if you're about to lose a cavalry engagement, you can basically prolong that engagement for 30 seconds, which is potentially massive and life-saving. The Nordic Mounted Raiders, I'd say avoid them. Too little health, too little armor, just too little of everything. They are very light, so not good against infantry. Again, with the Nordic Horse Raiders, just avoid them. And the problem with the Viking Raider Cavalry, low armor, decent enough charge bonus, high melee attack, but not good against enemy cavalry. Avoid the Nordic Raiders like the plague. They are a horrible, horrible unit. Why you would ever give the snipe ability to a unit that has 80 range is completely beyond me. The price of skirmish cavalry and horse archers in Attila seem to be... there's something wrong with it. For 775 you can either get a Nordic Raider unit, or you can get the Nordic Horse Lords. One of these units is going to get 200 plus kills reliably in battles. One of them is not. Guess which unit? So yeah, light skirmish, heavy melee, the choice should be easy. Then we have a very peculiar unit, Warhounds. Warhounds are very light warhounds. They have war dogs. You can see that they are. The Creative Assembly is very keen to tell you that this unit has dogs because it's in the Warhounds category. It has a picture of dogs here. It has a picture of dogs here. Warhounds, very light warhounds, has war dogs. So in this small info panel, in this space, they see it fit to tell you that 5 times within a few centimeters that war dogs actually have dogs, or warhounds actually have dogs, but they don't show range on skirmish units. That is a decision I do not understand. But these warhounds are very light warhounds. They will just die to infantry, skirmishers, and horse archers. Just about everything kills them, but they are worth it for the annoyance factor alone. Sending them in to disrupt the enemy, to give in something to think about, can be very useful. And for as cheap as they are, you can use the warhounds, send out the war dogs, forget about them, rush in the handlers, make the enemy waste ammunition. Such utility from these units. Just don't expect them to kill anything, because these are the kinds of units that are going to allow you to kill better due to using the rest of your army more effectively, because they have caused disruption. So, enough blabbering about the Danes. Let's go into battle and see what these units look like. I'm not going to actually play a battle now. You will see plenty battles with the Danes, so I'm not going to put one in this video, because then this video is going to be much longer than it already is. So Danes in the snow here, guerrilla deployment by the Nordic Brigade, Nordic Brigands, I mean. Wolf coats, looks like they borrowed their coats from the Berserkers and the Wolf Warriors. Nordic Raiders, skirmish cavalry. And here's the stuff, elite Nordic Warriors. Absolutely, in my opinion, one of the coolest looking units in the game. Now, I am probably a bit biased because I'm not a Dane, I am a Norwegian, but Norwegians and Danes are... Well, I'm probably going to piss off a few people if I say this, but we are like two pieces of the same cloth in many ways. And once we were. Norway was in a union with Denmark and has been under Sweden, and basically there was a lot of trade, a lot of commerce, a lot of wars between the Danish kings, the Swedish kings, and the Norwegian kings at a point in time. Nordic bows, Nordic Leve, Viking Raider cavalry. They have axes, but don't bring these guys. Bring the Nordic horse lords. Super historically inaccurate that the Danes are using massive formations of heavily armored horsemen, but there you go. Here we have the Nordic Bikes. Don't expect them to do too well against anything, but they can be useful as a disruptive screen against the enemy. The Norse Berserkers, these guys look like they have been through a dishwasher full of shit. They do not look cool. They should look a lot cooler. Nordic Axe Warband and Nordic Warriors, Nordic Hurlers, and Nordic... Ooh, they are talking about goat fucking. That is interesting. So let's see, we haven't taken a look at the... Here are Nordic Band. This is just a terrible unit. Some chicks in there as well, a bit slacking on the hygiene. But the Thrall Skirmishers, the Nordic Warriors, they look kinda cool. These guys could be the Berserkers actually. Viking Raiders. And the dogs. The Warhounds that have dogs. Nordic Javelinmen. And that is the Danish roster. Certainly not a powerhouse faction. They have their main strengths in infantry, which is a strength that is easily taken away by enemy cavalry. But the Nordic Warlords are good. They are a good cavalry unit. Let's have a look at a few of their encyclopedia stats here that don't show up on the unit cards for some reason. 20 attack against, 20 bonus against cavalry, which is okay. They also have missiles, and that is something that can allow them to do some interesting things, like being posted at the rear of a unit, throw javelins and then charge in, or do a lot of damage to enemy cavalry that is trying to get away from them, fire their missiles that way, or just do more damage to enemy cavalry on the charge because they throw javelins. So I really like the Nordic Warlords, and you can bring some awesome builds with the combination of Nordic Warlords and elite Nordic Warriors, for example. You can have a lot of fun with that. And also for some more cavalry support, you can have Nordic Spearmasters, again an awesome looking unit, or some elite Nordic Spears. I just have to say it again, I think the Creative Assembly nailed it with the look of these guys, both in terms of armor and shields. The very cool round shields here by the Nordic Spearmasters. Let's just have a look at how it looks, and look at their shield wall. Yeah, it looks okay. These guys kind of mess it up by not bringing big enough shields. Anyway, enough blabbering for me about the Danes. Danes, not the strongest faction, but a very fun faction. Try pikes, dogs and two-handed axes sometimes. You'll see what I'm talking about. Strength and honor.